everyone. Welcome to the first episode of the Untangling Aging series. I'm Jessica, and I'm so excited to be your host. Today, I'm going to be talking to Alex Coville, the co-founder of Age1. Thank you so much for being here with me, Alex. I'm so excited to talk to you. Just starting off with this interview, I would like you to ask if you could just briefly introduce yourself, like what you're doing, what you're up to.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Alex Coville, originally from Maine. Went to undergraduate in Boston, and that's where I worked in David Sinclair's lab as an undergrad, and totally caught fire, my passion for the aging field, and kind of never looked back since then. Got a PhD at Stanford and Tom Rando's lab studying aging, and now I've transitioned to the investor world. Ran a family office for the past 2 years, and now I'm super excited to be launching Age1, which is the next evolution of the longevity fund with my colleague Laura Deming.
Wow, so you have an incredibly strong science background, having done your PhD, postdoc, and whatnot. Like, you could have totally chosen to stay in academia. You could have also chosen to primarily continue in life sciences consulting. So I was wondering what caused you to shift to VC specifically.
Yeah, that's a great question. And props to you for catching that I worked in consulting too. Didn't even mention that part. Had a brief stop working at Putnam Associates for 2 years in life sciences strategy consulting. But in essence, YVC is actually back in those days, back when I was applying for undergrad co-ops at Northeastern. I went through and I cold emailed probably like 45 different firms that were mostly VC funds. There were a handful of consulting firms trickled in there, and the only one out of those 45 people to get back to me was a partner at this consulting firm, Putnam. And so that was actually how I originally got my start in the consulting world. And I think that opened my eyes to some extent in terms of the fact that not only is like the science absolutely critical behind innovation and behind biotech companies and big pharmas, but also the business aspect to the field is really important as well. But I think more recently, the answer to why VC has really been driven by the fact that I've always been very motivated by trying to accelerate and catalyze the aging field however I can, using like my own skill set and talents. And I was always kind of looking for whatever had the most seemingly like counterfactual impact at the time. Like, where could I personally make the biggest contribution? And for a while, I actually thought that was going to be starting a company in the space. I was looking into building a company working on muscle aging, and I was really excited by that. But then kind of over the past year, that answer shifted to, in essence, building Age1 with Laura. And I think that's the area where right now I can have the biggest impact on the aging field.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. So am I right in saying that Age1 is your primary focus right now? And if so, it's like what's a day in your life like in regards to that?
Yeah, great question. What an average day looks like today. So Age1 is my primary focus. We're having our public launch in the next week or two, which we're very excited about. So right now, my focus has been to talk to reporters. Started out the day talking to an ultra high net worth from Switzerland, who I was kind of hosting in San Francisco and showing him around the different cool aging companies that exist in the city. Right now, I'm down in Los Angeles, about to meet with some family offices associated with some former NBA players. So the job bounces between investors and like bringing more money into the field and kind of teaching other investors the big opportunities that exist. Because I think a lot of people, the aging field just isn't on their radar in terms of exactly the order of magnitude of value that these companies are going to create, these new longevity biotechnology companies. I think that's overlooked by a lot of people. But most of my days are not spent like today. Most of my days are spent mapping out the science in the aging field, trying to, in essence, source founders that are willing to work on crazy moonshots that we internally think should exist. And then ultimately just getting to talk to a lot of very smart early talent and help kind of mentor them in their process to become the best possible founders that they can be.
That is so exciting. So VC, I took an intro VC fellowship last semester, totally not an expert, but this is a space that I would love to learn more about and potentially get into. So I did take an intro workshop in VC and I learned about this thing called a quote unquote investment thesis. So I was wondering, do you have an investment thesis? And if you do, what is it?
Yeah, really, really good question. So our investment thesis at Age1 was really shaped by Laura's kind of 13 years investing into the field. She ran a pilot experiment back in 2018, which was called the Age1 Accelerator Program, which was a 3-month long program, kind of an accelerator incubator program that was modeled after Y Combinator to some extent. And in essence, that program featured a demo day at the end of the 3 months. It involved a lot of mentorship, a lot of kind of in-person activity between the different batches of founders. And while at the end of that program, we kind of realized that the time frame was like a little bit too short for biotech companies to get enough de-risking data in lab for a kind of bigger milestone. What we did discover is that the founders that came out of that accelerator program were absolutely world class, and the type of founders that are willing to run through walls in order to make their visions reality. So that really shaped the investment thesis that we have today at kind of Age1, the firm that we're launching in a week or two, which is to bet on founder-led biotech. We're really looking for contrarian founders that are very, very ambitious, that kind of have these thesis-driven companies. So less so focused on founders and companies that already have existing assets or IP, although that's great. We really look for founders that come to us with a very grandiose, ambitious moonshot 20-year goal, and then take a very pragmatic lens as to what each month looks like to get to that crazy 20-year goal for the field. So that's kind of like the founder archetype behind our thesis. And then in terms of what we invest in and kind of what types of companies, about 90% of the companies we invest in are therapeutics companies, so biotechnology companies. We're really looking to fund companies that are developing interventions that give humans, in essence, the agency to choose how long they live.
So, how do you envision the longevity space changing in the future, and what would that mean for longevity VC firms like Age1?
Yeah, really good question. Things move fast, is what I will say. Things change very, very fast, which is very exciting because I think for a long time the aging field has been pretty stagnant in terms of new activity in the field or promising research that has been translated. But right now, it does really feel like we're kind of at an inflection point for the field in terms of just focus, attention, resources. And so, yeah, I'm pretty optimistic in terms of the next 5 to 10 years, kind of turning this corner from a field that's held a lot of promise and can do really cool things in model organisms like mice and primates to a field that can do things in humans that can actually prevent, delay, extend health span. I think that's going to be one of the key differences that we see over the next 5 to 10 years. And then maybe on a more nitty-gritty level, really excited for the intersection between regenerative medicine and the aging field. I think we're going to see an explosion of people working on cell therapy and tissue engineering and xenotransplantation to help, in essence, get at the aging problem in humans. I think we're going to see a new era of the way that the FDA views aging in humans in terms of developing an intervention for aging in humans. We've already seen this year with one of our portfolio companies, Loyal, that made history back in March, where they got FDA protocol concurrence for, in essence, their pivotal trial in dogs to already make this shift from targeting one disease at a time to targeting aging broadly. And I cannot wait till we can make the similar thing happen in humans.
Yeah, that is so exciting. Like, I also envision like the field totally exploding, and I feel so lucky to be able to get involved in this as an undergrad. So next question is more of like regarding how VCs operate. So I kind of read a little about how like tech VCs are like kind of different from like biotech specific VCs in terms of like how they function. So I was wondering, are longevity VCs kind of like exactly like general like biotech VCs, or is there like something different about longevity focused VCs?
Yeah, really, really good question. I think like a part of our transition with the Age1 Accelerator program was moving much more in the direction of a tech VC rather than a biotech VC. I think when we typically think of like traditional biotech VCs, a couple of things come to mind. One is a venture creation model, which has been proven to be really, really successful and very, very impactful to human health. And so I love the venture creation model. But in essence, this is something that's existed for a while now with the flagship pioneerings of the world, the Third Rock Ventures. Those ecosystems do this model very, very well. And they're quite contrasted to, in essence, how tech VCs have operated in San Francisco, where back in the early 2000s, Y Combinator, Founders Fund, A16Z really enabled a new kind of founder and a new type of model in the tech space. It's a very parallel transition actually of like what happened in the tech field then, which was these VC funds being willing to bet on kind of less experienced, more ambitious founders. I think we're seeing a similar transition happen in the longevity space right now, and that's kind of core to our thesis. But at the same time, I think it's really, really important to be ultra rigorous on the science. Like just because somebody is less experienced and not a repeat biotech CEO does not mean that we are investing in things that are super, super rigorous from a science perspective. And ultimately, you kind of need both. If you want to be this kind of like less experienced founder doing a founder-led biotech with this 10 or 20-year moonshot, you really need to pair with the world's best drug developers as advisors and coworkers and mentors.
Yeah, that is so exciting. And I was really curious, like as an undergrad, I was wondering, do you have any advice on how I can actively learn and get more involved in VC, specifically VC and longevity within the longevity space?
Yeah, great question. So Michael Retchen from Nucleate, who is fantastic, runs an Airtable that I think is a little bit outdated now, but it's so useful where it has kind of like an Airtable of all of these different biotech venture capital firm internships and fellowships that you could do. So I would refer everybody to that list. I think even if you're super passionate about aging, you don't necessarily need to start like, I think just like getting exposure to different areas of biotech is almost more important than like immediately working on aging right from the get-go to kind of build those base skill sets in the industry. So yeah, I think that's a great place to look. I'm hoping to add Age1 to that list at some point soon. We have a couple undergraduate interns right now that we have absolutely loved the opportunity to work with. But I think the biggest advice is just get involved, go to a lot of these community events. And then I think the other key advice is just like add value. Do the thing that VCs themselves are terrible at doing, yet claim they do all the time. Actually just help invite people to events and introduce VCs to really cool founders and opportunities. I think like the main way that I bonded with Laura and connected with Laura over the years was kind of back in 2017. I did the same thing for her when I was a first year grad student. In essence, helped started bring a lot of friends to her community events, helped clean up, helped in essence do whatever needed to be done to help the longevity fund with their community. So
Thank you so much. So that's like really wise and definitely some food for thought for me and for all the undergrads out there that will be listening to this interview. And actually, if I remember correctly, when you were an undergrad, you already built this interest in aging. So what exactly was your story and how did you start getting into this field when you were an undergrad?
yeah, so for most of undergrad, I was obsessed with the biology of cancer. I always knew I wanted to like work on aging to some extent, but I just had no idea it was possible. So it got to be about senior year of undergrad when I actually even knew that the aging field existed. Previous to that, I had idolized Bob Langer, the chemical engineer at MIT, and everything that he had done in the biotech space. I mean, he's co-founder of probably like 30 plus companies at this point, serial co-founder and academic founder, and just a true visionary in terms of combining the skill sets and the technical rigor of engineering with the problems that exist in delivery and other areas of biotech. So always idolized him. And then kind of, yeah, realized a little bit later than I would have wanted that the aging field existed. And so immediately reached out to David Sinclair after reading about his work online, invited him to come talk at a club that I had ran at Northeastern. And after the talk, kind of hung around, chatted with him, and it eventually led to him offering for me to come work in his lab. And so then did that for about 8 months. And that's when I was like, okay, this is my field. I had no idea it existed for like over 40 years. This is like the coolest thing I could ever imagine, like bringing to humanity and actually like being able to translate on. And so, yeah, not looking back. But that was my transition.
Wow, I actually totally relate to that feeling because personally, I discovered aging also through something that David Sinclair wrote, which was his book Lifespan, which happened like last semester actually. So I think it's like so cool and amazing that you took so much initiative and that he personally invited you to like go work in his lab. Like undergrad Alex killing it. I do have
I,
I
I
have
didn't kill it with most things, but that ended up working out very well. I'm a huge believer in the fact that like everybody has these like super mentors or like potential super mentors. That the key is for them to give you opportunity. You're in essence looking for people to like give you that chance or like to take that bet on you. And I think that's like the key thing to seek out.
Yeah, actually, Courtney told me the same thing. She was like, go read the book, Super Mentors, amazing book. Seems like everyone here just like all knows. So I actually have one last question to end this. And question is, if you had maybe like extra years in your life, say 30 years in your life, what would you do with them?
Yeah, I think if I had an extra 30 years of my life, I would actually know what I was talking about in the physics world. I'm super interested in all things in kind of theoretical physics, but have like no time to actually study it or dive in. Uh, that would be one thing, and I think like the Oppenheimer moment was definitely like, oh my gosh, like it would be so cool to have time to actually be able to like really dive into these core things that I just kind of like walk around knowing that they exist, but not having time to actually like dive into things that I could love learning about. So that'd be one. And I think probably beyond that, I think just spending more time with friends. I think the nature of the work that I do right now, I have a lot of friendships that I would love to be able to spend so much more time with people, enjoying so many different activities and things and traveling and stuff, and just don't get to right now.
Yeah, totally relate to that. Thank you so much for answering my questions, for chatting with me. Good luck with your amazing work, for making that like hopefully possible in the future. Thank you so much for your time, Alex.